April goes to the specified address where she meets up again with the turtles, who tell her that she has to put this bag over her head. She initially refuses, but after they tell her that their master will answer all their questions, she relents. The turtles then lead her down through the sewers and eventually take the bag off her head when they reach their lair. And for the first time in the movie, she sees Master Splinter, who welcomes her to their lair. The next scene will take place in Sax's office, where he is annoyed by how the Foot Clan has failed to take care of the vigilante. Karai points out that her ninjas were only prepared to deal with one vigilante and not 4. She also adds that whatever these vigilantes were, they were not human. Sax is puzzled until Karai hands over a computer chip which shows the results of the DNA scan from some of the blood left on one of her ninja swords, which not only reveals that it is indeed not human blood, but that there's also an unknown substance in the genetic code. Almost instantly, Sax recognizes it and makes a quick phone call to Rokusaki, saying that their job just got a whole lot more complicated and that there appear to be some survivors of Project Renaissance. Now, some people might object to me using that word as a name for the project that created the mutagen, since on the surface it does seem kind of dumb, but I think it does still kind of work since Renaissance is the French word for rebirth. But back to the scene in the turtles' lair. April is sitting at the table eating pizza with them while Splinter tells her their backstory. He reveals that when he was experimented on, at a certain point, he started to grow more conscious of his surroundings until he could understand the scientists around him, but he still could not speak. Along with that, he was also subjected to training videos that taught him language, along with other videos demonstrating fighting skills and techniques provided by the Foot Clan, which is also where he learned Japanese. Now, this is probably not the direction most people would want the origin to go, but it is the best I could come up with while sticking to the original framework of the movie as best as I can. But if nothing else, I hope people can at least agree that it still makes more sense than Splinter and the Turtles learning it from a book that somebody flushed down the toilet. Back to the story. Splinter at some point learned that the goal of Project Renaissance was to turn animals into mutants so they could perform tasks for humans, mostly heavy labor. While he didn't like many of the scientists, he recalls liking April's father as he treated him the best. But one night when Sax was giving some unknown individuals a tour of the lab, since they weren't aware that he could understand them, he learned that Sax planned to also sell the mutants to replace humans as soldiers of war. Not just to foreign dictators or the US military, but to criminal organizations like the Foot Clan, since some animals have shorter lives than humans and thus could be trained in a shorter span of time. April is confused, saying that she thought they were making cures for genetic diseases. Splinter explains that it was just a cover story that Sax made up for the public. He continues, saying that the next day he made his escape into the sewers where he hoped to spend the rest of his life, that is, until he slowly started to mutate over several months until he became the mutant rat man that he is now. Occasionally he would come back to the same sewers where the TGRR building was located until one day he found 4 turtles lying on the ground. Feeling pity, he grabbed them and raised them as they also started to mutate, where he would pass down all the skills he had internalized during his mental conditioning. After Splinter finishes his story, he explains that while he had not seen April, he vividly remembers his father talking about her to his colleagues and that he recognized her name on the news. April is initially overwhelmed but composes herself and thanks Splinter for sharing this, but asks why he wanted to see her in the first place. Splinter explains that it is both because his sons have told him that they remembered her saving their lives, and also because she is the last link he has to her father. He also explains that she could be in mortal danger if she continues to follow them, and he hoped that by explaining everything he knew to her, she would stop pursuing them and spare her and the turtles from that danger. April thanks him, but she says that she has dedicated too much of her life to uncovering the shady dealings of Eric Sachs to stop now, and even if she did stop, his company and the Foot Clan would still continue to ruin the lives of others. The room remains silent until Splinter relents and tells her that she is free to go, but begs her to leave him and the turtles out of her story. April agrees and leaves, but is stopped by Donatello and the others. Donatello hands her a computer chip that contains all the data he scrapped from her phone. April is surprised by this show of trust and gladly accepts. After that, Michelangelo asks if they can hang out together at some point to become proper friends. April smiles and says yes, pointing out that they know where to find her if they feel like it. After she leaves for the surface, the turtles return back to Splinter, who abruptly tells them that they have to leave their current home as fast as possible. Initially taken aback, they all accept until Michelangelo asks if they can visit April again. Splinter says no, causing the turtles to argue back and forth until Leonardo tells them all to relax. But this gets on Raphael's nerves and he accuses Leonardo of always sucking up to Splinter, who stops their argument in its tracks. The next scene will cut to Karai standing on a rooftop surrounded by her fellow ninjas while she holds up a screen with a red dot right underneath where they are standing. Back at the sewer lair, the turtles and Splinter have started packing while Michelangelo is trying to cheer Raphael up with little success. At one point, he suggested they play Buck Buck like they did as kids, which actually makes Raphael smile for once and he just says, maybe later. But then Raphael suddenly notices something on Michelangelo's shell, he picks it off and hands it over to Donnie, who freezes when he realizes that it's a tracking device. Almost in an instant, the walls explode and out comes Karai, flanked by way more foot ninjas than the last time they fought. Now some of you might be wondering why they decided to replace Shredder with Karai in this scene. Well, that's for two reasons. One is because even back when I first saw this movie when I was younger, I thought Karai was heavily underutilized. And two, this change serves to help build up how intimidating Shredder must be layered on the movie. Karai signals to her ninjas to get the turtles and leave Splinter for herself. The two engage in a fierce fight. Both initially appear to be even until Splinter starts to utilize his unique anatomy to his advantage. Unlike Splinter, the turtles aren't faring that well, given the increased amount of ninjas they have to face this time. Splinter notices this and tries to break up his fight with Karai, which turns out to be a big mistake. Karai throws a bunch of shurikens at Splinter, who can dodge a good chunk of them, but still gets scratched by one or two of them. Once he joins the turtles, the tide of battle seems to change in their favor, until Karai attacks again and Splinter's consciousness starts to slip, which gives Karai the advantage as she beats him up. This causes Raphael to go into a rage and he attacks Karai with everything he has. Unfortunately, his rage makes his attacks predictable and Karai is able to briefly disable him until Leonardo steps in and orders Raphael to get Splinter to safety. For once, Raphael doesn't protest and immediately grabs Splinter and escapes as quickly as possible. The other turtles try to escape too, but are picked up one by one by the foot ninjas. Once the unconscious turtles have been dragged off, Karai gives one final order to have their home blown up. Later that night, April is doing the dishes until she hears someone knocking on her window. Nervously, she opens the curtains and sees an exhausted Raphael standing outside her window carrying a wounded and unconscious Splinter in his arms, who awkwardly asks if they can crash for the night. As for the other turtles, the next scene will show all three of them waking up in glass boxes in an unknown facility. They then notice Eric Sachs standing before them with a sinister look on his face. He then explains to the turtles that he had assumed that the original formula used for the mutagen was ineffective, but now that he can see that all he needed was a bit of patience. But more importantly, he now has what he needs to work on a more perfected mutagen formula, one that will work more rapidly. Michelangelo rhetorically asks how he's going to get it, and Eric Sachs responds by having their blood drained all the way until they fall unconscious, but just before they die. Eric Sachs smiles and then orders to have them transported to their cells so they can recover and have more of their blood drained later. Back at April's apartment, Raphael gets out of the shower after April forced him to spend hours in there from living in the sewers for his entire life. April meanwhile is tending to Splinter, who is still unconscious on her bed. The two of them sit on the couch where they have a heart-to-heart about their lives. April tells Raphael about how devastated she was when she heard about the news of her father dying in that lab fire. Now she still hasn't been able to move past it. Raphael in turn recounts all the times his brothers annoyed him in different ways. Whether it be Leonardo bossing him around, Donatello's technobabble, or Michelangelo being himself. He admits that now he would sacrifice everything to relive those moments, now that they might be dead on a dissection table. Raphael breaks down and the two of them hug each other in an emotional moment of catharsis. The next day, back at Sax's lair, he is currently showing the still recovering turtles off to Orokusaki. As he keeps talking, he then offers to sell the turtles and the rat to Shredder for free on top of the money he already promised them. Orokusaki says that he will consider after he has tested their capabilities himself. That same night, the turtles wake up to find their glass cell doors open with their weapons lying in front of them. While they initially are suspicious, the three turtles decide to escape as quickly as possible, until they turn a corner where they see the Shredder. Donned in his armor and standing near the end of the tunnel, Leonardo asks who he is. After the Shredder gives his answer, he takes a sitting position and waits for them to attack. After a bit of hesitation, Leonardo, Donatello, and Michelangelo all charge at him. But, like a deleted scene from the 90s live-action movie, he defeats all three of them by using the Fudoza technique while seated. Shredder then gets back up while the injured turtles are dragged off again to have their blood harvested. At the same time, Eric Eric Sachs walks in to congratulate Shredder for putting up a good fight. Back in April's apartment, she and Raph are watching the news, anxiously waiting for clues as to where the other turtles might be. After getting nothing, they overhear Splinter waking up in the other room. Instantly, they rush over to greet him as he opens his eyes for the first time. Splinter is relieved to see both of them alive, but is silent after he asks where the others are, quickly realizing what happened. Splinter remains silent until he admits to Raphael that he was also wrong, while April was right, that they will never be truly safe as long as Sachs and the Foot Clan are still about. Thus, the three agree to find Leonardo, Donatello, and Michelangelo as fast as possible. Back at the facility at night, Leonardo tries to calm down his mind by meditating, until he hears somebody enter from the outside. He finds to his surprise that it is the Shredder. He angrily asks what he's doing here, and to his surprise, Shredder compliments him and his brothers for their fighting skills. He explains that while they own them, he offers them a position in the Foot along with Splinter and Raphael, but Leonardo refuses, which makes Shredder leave the room. The next morning, April is feverishly typing away at her laptop by using the restored data from the stick that Donatello gave her. She surmises that the most likely place they have been taken to is Eric Sachs' private estate further up north. However, until they have further evidence, she recommends not traveling there. Fortunately, she still has a contact at TCRI whom she contacts. Luckily, her contact informs them that Sachs has ordered several unusual chemical components to be delivered to his estate. April thanks her contact, and thinking quickly, she gives Vern a call, asking for a lift. Just like in the original movie, he thinks that April is asking him out, and he accepts. Back in Sachs' estate, his scientists have been able to create a perfect duplicate of the original mutagen formula thanks to all the blood they've extracted. Sachs then tells Shredder that their job is pretty much finished and offers to have the turtles euthanized properly, this time if they continue to resist. Shredder refuses, stating that the Foot Clan had invested too much money into the project all those years ago and that he instead would like to keep the turtles alive a little longer just in case the fourth one and the rats decide to rescue them. After this, the scene where April gets into Vern's van plays out largely the same, with Raphael revealing himself, except that Vern also notices Splinter in the back before he drives off towards Sachs' estate. Back at said estate, the turtles are approached by Shredder one more time, who says that he plans to have them transported to his base of operations so they can be initiated into the Foot Clan proper. Leonardo and the others naturally refuse and ask why he would even consider it again. Shredder explains that since they partially owed their existence to the Foot Clan, that makes them part of it whether they like it or not, along with the fact that Eric Sachs gave them to the Foot Clan for free. But he promises that if they accept the initiation, they will not be treated like property, but as equal members within the ranks of the Foot Clan. Back with April, Raphael, Vern, and Splinter, they make a plan to infiltrate his estate by having Raphael swim through the sewage system, by diving down through the river and going up one of the pipes. Once he gets in there, he crawls on the ceiling, avoiding the guards until he reaches the control room so he can find where his brothers are located. Once he finds them, he sneaks down to the secret lab under the building. After evading more guards, he finally reaches the underground room where his brothers are kept. After a heartfelt reunion, Leonardo tells him to get out while he still can. Raphael ignores him and breaks them out, where they gather their weapons again and escape with the elevator, where the iconic rap scene from the original plays out. When they reach the top floor, they all fight the guards there in a sequence similar to the hallway fight from the movie Old Boy. After they have beaten all the guards, they continue their escape, until the Shredder enters the room from the next hallway, and just like in the actual movie, he then proceeds to mercilessly beat the crap out of Raphael to the point where he chips off a piece of his shell, along with the other turtles. Shredder then orders them to be transported. April reaches Sachs' office, but Sachs instantly recognizes her and has her surrounded by bodyguards. Sachs glows in front of her until Splinter jumps down from the ceiling vent and takes out all of his bodyguards and angrily tackles him to the ground. Splinter asks him where the turtles are while slowly tightening his tail around Sachs' neck. Surprisingly, Sachs seems quite calm about this and points out the window where he sees a truck driving away. Instantly, both April and Splinter realize what's going on, with Splinter then pushing Sachs out of the window in a blind rage. Splinter tells an initially shocked April to gather all the evidence she can while he goes after the turtles. April composes herself and points out that more guards are going to arrive at any moment and that she can't fight them without him. Splinter reluctantly agrees and joins her. April thanks him and swipes Eric Sachs's passcode that fell out of his pocket and onto the floor. With it, they can get past the entrance to the facility where the turtles were held. Splinter finds and gathers their weapons while April is taking pictures of the facility. After that, they travel back up to save the turtles. However, at this point, all the security guards know that they are there and fire upon them when they try to steal one of their vehicles. But then, to both their surprise, Vern's van crashes right through the gate and he yells at them to jump in. After Splinter and April get in, Vern floors it and asks them where they need to go next. Back at the truck carrying the turtles, one of the drivers of the other vehicles notices Vern's van driving at full speed behind them. Once it is right next to it, Splinter leaps out of the van window and climbs up on the roof and starts jumping from car roof to car roof until he reaches the truck and knocks out the driver. This causes the truck to veer off course and into the snowy woods. The uneven terrain causes the truck to shake violently until the container door opens, giving Splinter the chance to enter. After another emotional reunion, Splinter breaks them free and hands the turtles back their weapons. They all rush to jump out of the container, only to find that every other vehicle is chasing them down the hill. What precedes a long action sequence where the turtles and Splinter fight a small army of foot ninjas on top of the truck, but without the element of surprise that they had, their attack is nowhere near as successful. That is, until the Shredder and Karai leap onto the truck from one of the other vehicles. While they are initially confident they can win, the two quickly turn the tide of the battle. While Leonardo is locked in a duel with Karai, Shredder is able to land a strong enough blow to Splinter that he sends him flying up the truck and onto the snowy ground. During the heat of the moment, Raphael lands a sneak attack against Karai, which also sends her flying up the truck. During this, Donatello notices that the truck is heading straight towards a cliff. With this in mind, both the Turtles and Shredder fight each other with everything that they have, neither one willing to stop until the other is dead. While Shredder does knock some of the turtles off, just like in the original movie, they utilize their shells as makeshift sleighs and catch back up to the truck by using the parts of the environment as ramp. But despite their resourcefulness, they still can't beat Shredder, and the cliff is getting closer and closer with each second. At that moment, unlike in the original movie, it is Raphael who suggests that they take out the Shredder by playing Bug Buck. The other turtles agree, since if they are going to go down, they can at least take the Shredder with them. And like in the original movie, they perfectly execute their last chance with Raphael kicking Shredder in the face, which ends him and Steamwing themselves flying off the cliff with the truck. And just like in the original movie, there will be a long tracking shot of Shredder falling down until he hits the ground with a crash. And after that, April, Splinter, and Vern finally reach the edge of the cliff. When they reach it, they initially assume that the turtles are dead, until they look down and see that they were just able to land on the side of the cliff, where they then proceed to climb back up. Exhausted, they finally reach the top, with Raphael looking down at the remains of the truck at the bottom, and like in the original movie, he gives out one triumphant "Cowabunga." After that, the movie will cut to April back in her office where her boss is waiting for her. April smiles and pulls out a USB stick with all the data she had initially gathered, along with some more data she extracted from Sax's personal computer back at his estate. The next scene will take place in her apartment, where both Vern, the Turtles, and Splinter are here to celebrate and congratulate her on her story. While they celebrate, they catch some news footage at Sax's estate where it appears that Sax's body and Shredder's have not been found. This initially puts down everyone's spirits until April starts to play the footage she recorded in the lab as a child. The final scene of the movie will be mostly the same as the original, with the Turtles saying goodbye to April at the car park. Vern also gives one final thanks to Donatello for fixing his van in exchange for him helping them. Before the Turtles leave to find a new home, they all give April one last hug and promise to stay in touch, before they then drive off in one of the few intact foot vehicles that they stole. And that, people, was the final part of my 3-part rewrite series of the 2014 Michael Bay produced Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie from 2014. There's one thing I want to make clear right now, is that I did not make this video to dunk on either Michael Bay, Jonathan Leesman, or anything else who worked on this movie. I made this video because I really wanted to like this movie, even when I first watched it when I was younger. And if you yourself love the movie and hate the revised version I came up with, then I would like to thank you personally for watching this long and giving my version a fair shot. But I am curious, how did the rest of you feel about my proposed version of this movie's story? Is it better, worse, or the same? Were there some problems you had with my version that you did not have in the original? If you do, I would love to hear them down below in the comments. Until then, see you next time.